This is just into CNN. The video you are seeing here, these are protesters in Paris who have stormed the offices of the investment firm BlackRock in the middle of the city. In the video, you can see protesters are chanting, waving flags, carrying flares. Smoke is filling the building. It is the 11th day of nationwide demonstrations against the country's new pension bill. If you're unfamiliar, it raises the retirement age from 62 to 64. It has infuriated Parisians everywhere. CNN correspondent Melissa Bell is live in Paris. Melissa, can you tell us what you saw on the ground here?
Well, this is where the main march is just preparing to get going. Caitlin, let me show you around. The union saying just within the last hour or so that they stand united. They intend to continue their protest action. The 11th day here, there are strikes going on nationwide, and this march will get going shortly. The government for now, Caitlin, saying it's going to stand firm. But you mentioned those images a moment ago. Those were rail worker union workers who managed to occupy that building for about 10 minutes. And it's a reminder really of what we've seen the last couple of weeks. What had been largely peaceful protests since they began in January, really turning a lot more violent and a lot more confrontational with the police. And that's something we expect to see again today. 11,000 policemen that are out across the country to try and keep the peace. But some groups determined to turn these as violent as they can. For now, we're waiting to go. The talks that took place between the unions last night and the government collapsed. Once again, both sides failing to agree, with the government vowing that it will push this retirement age up from 62 to 64 and that it will not back down even in the face of these repeated strikes and marches.
And as CNN's Melissa Bell reports for us now, the clashes between police and protesters have become increasingly violent. A warning, her report contains disturbing video.
Another march turns to violence. The streets of Paris made weekly a battlefield. Between a violent minority targeting riot police and officers now accused of the disproportionate use of force by human rights groups, facing allegations of arbitrary arrest, the excessive use of batons, and targeting journalists. For weeks, the protests against the government's plans to raise the retirement age in France from 62 to 64 were remarkably peaceful. But the forcing through Parliament of the reform in March changed that. The weekly protests turning more violent, with the so-called Black Bloc more visibly present, masked militants who use violence to target symbols of the state and capitalism.
It is everything that resembles authority, everything that resembles the Republic, everything that resembles the Republic as we have loved it for at least 2 centuries, that is attacked by these ultra-left thugs.
We will not give in to this violence. In a democracy, violence is not allowed.
Since 2016, the loosely organized group of anarchists has sought direct confrontation with the police whenever it could, and have now attached themselves to the previously peaceful pension protests. In a rare interview, CNN was able to meet with one.
Is it about reclaiming the streets then?
Yes, because the street is just for us. Because the street is for the people. We want the police to get out of the street, get out of our life.
For the police, the job is an unenviable one, keeping order on the streets, even as they are directly targeted. Since the start of the pension protests in January, more than 1,000 policemen have been injured. But of those, 768 were injured in the last 2 weeks, according to the Interior Ministry.
The violence is no longer on the fringe of demonstration. It's become central to it. In fact, the people have understood that in protesting calmly, they'll get nothing, especially from this government.
But in a worsening cycle of violence, the police is now accused of its own disproportionate use of force. Amnesty International tweeting the hashtag #ProtectTheProtest, and French police facing 45 official investigations into allegations of excessive force, according to the Interior Ministry. One brigade in particular, created during the Yellow Vest movement, the Bravem, accused of particular ferocity. With order on the front line of the protest movement largely broken down, there are weekly victims on all sides. Protesters have lost eyes, testicles, many others have been put in hospital, with distrust now high as each side seeks to reclaim the streets. Melissa Bell, CNN, Paris.